After my playthrough of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, I found myself interested and intrigued by the other stuff made by Frictional Games. I wanted to see what they've been up to since the release of Amnesia, because to be completely honest, I had never once heard of their other works until I looked into it. I noticed that they mainly make sequels to their original works. There were 2 games called Penumbrum, 2 Amnesia sequels, and an original game called SOMA. When looking at their list of works, it felt out of place, special even. When looking further into the game, I realized that it had even been nominated for a ton of awards back at the 2015 Global Game Awards. After the recommendation from a friend, I decided to pick up the game. After all, it was on sale at the time for like $4. No harm in picking up the game, especially since for once in my piss baby poor ass life, I had a good $50 on hand. So I went ahead and bought it, especially after I was told the game took place in the deep dark depths of the sea, and it had to do with robots. Evil robots in the dark depths of the seemingly bottomless ocean are 2 of my biggest fears. Since I was young, the Five Nights at Freddy's games and Subnautica always scared the shit out of me. I got on the game and I played through all of it, and I have many conflicting thoughts about it. When I first opened the game, I was amazed by the graphics. I know nowadays it's nothing special, but since this was right after playing one of Frictional Games' older games, The Dark Descent, I was in awe of how much progression they've made over the years. It also had much better textures compared to The Dark Descent, which is lovely to see. You play as a man named Simon who lives in Toronto. Simon is heading out of the house to go to a doctor's appointment because he had previously gotten into a car accident with his friend Ashley. Simon was left with a serious and life-threatening brain injury, and Ashley just fucking died, lol. Once making it to the doctor's office, it feels really off. Like, really off. There isn't anything scary or wrong with the office, it just feels weird. Like you don't belong there. Like you're out of place. Once Simon makes it to the main room, the doctor hooks Simon up to a machine that will scan his brain and will hopefully save his life. After this, however, Simon's mind goes dark and he reawakens in a dark, futuristic room. Simon has no recollection of how he got here, he has no clue where he is or what the date is, and it sounds like there's something outside that is wandering the halls. This is the moment I was hooked. It is a perfect opening that really got me interested, and even spooked. Sadly though, the game could not live up to my expectations. A good way of describing how I feel about SOMA is like I'm a fish, minding my own business, then one day someone comes to the lake I live in to go fishing. The fisherman throws his hook out into the water with bait on it. As a fish, the bait is delicious and delectable, but once you realize that it was all a trap, that feeling of euphoria you got was just soured a little. It makes you question if it was really worth it in the end, especially since now there's a chance that you're going to die. That is how I feel about SOMA. You may be wondering what I mean by this, and I'll explain, but I ask you to bear with me because there's a lot to talk about. SOMA has some of the worst fucking gameplay I've ever had to suffer through in a video game. I hate turn-based RPGs with a vigorous passion, but even I, the #1 turn-based RPG hater, has to admit that turn-based RPGs are more fun than the gameplay in SOMA. This gameplay abomination is so fucking bad. Frictional Games somehow managed to fuck up and regress back from when they made Amnesia: The Dark Descent. The general gameplay is a walking simulator with exploration elements with the occasional quote-unquote puzzles. I put puzzles in quotation marks because, to be completely honest, they aren't fucking puzzles. It's simple busy work like turning a generator on, smashing a window, or fucking doing math. At least I think you had to do math in this puzzle. I had zero fucking clue or explanation behind it, so I had to search up a fucking walkthrough. Some people consider the simulation part to be a puzzle, but I think that's really fucking stupid. Really stupid. All you do is just a bunch of simulations, fail, then put in a couple chips, then try again. That's no damn puzzle, that's just trial and error. You have to fetch for chips and look over the map for them to get all the assets for the simulation. It isn't very fun. And it confuses me how they fucked up something as simple as a fetch quest, when they did it perfectly in Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Just enough info is given for you to figure out where and when to use an object, and of course where to find said object in The Dark Descent. But in SOMA, there's not a single damn clue or sense of direction given to help you find these objects, like at all. The map is also way too basic. It makes things hard to traverse and explore because everything looks practically the same until close to the end of the game. This is especially an issue when at the end of the game you have to explore the bottom of the sea. It's hellish and incredibly hard to do. Honestly, the bottom of the sea is scary, I'm not gonna lie, but it is such a pile of shit gameplay wise. In practice, it's horrible, but in theory, it's good. The monsters in the game, while scary at times, aren't necessarily the best either. either. The models are great and a major improvement from Amnesia: The Dark Descent. The reason I don't like the monsters though is that some of them have clear and very set in stone patterns and ways of working, but others are just fucking stupid. Especially this one I believe is called Robot Head. I could just not figure out what the fuck she was doing the entire time. I tried keeping quiet, avoiding her, running past her. The only damn reason I was able to move on from her section was purely because of luck and I ran fast enough. I was so confused, I seriously had no clue what was going on. The other monsters aren't the best either, especially the ones with tentacles in the head. They were scary, but it wasn't a very fun section to play, like, at all. The fish monsters are the absolute worst fucking part of this game. They are annoying as hell and aren't even scary. They're just fucking annoying and they get in your face and, ugh, I can't get them off of me once they get to you and I just hate them. I hate them so much. There are also these parts of the game that are sort of scripted, like you can die during them and you aren't really told what to do. You're just supposed to run away and figure it out. That's a pretty cool concept, yeah, but the way it's executed in this game isn't very good at all. It's horrible. It's just kind of a nuisance, and when you finally figure out what you need to do to accomplish this, it isn't a feeling of success or excitement like, hell yeah, I just figured it out. It's more of a feeling like, thank God that shit is over with. That was so annoying and tedious. It isn't a very rewarding feeling. There are a couple of things I do like about the gameplay though. The mechanic of being able to listen to past recordings through the technology is really cool and a great way of connecting the story and the gameplay. Super creative and interesting, points for that. The healing mechanic, while not the best, is also a good way of connecting the gameplay to the plot and the plot to the mechanics and the mechanics of the world. It actually becomes important later near the end of the game. Those are really the only good things I can say about the gameplay though. The gameplay is that bad and God does it make the game so hard to enjoy. I really do mean that. It is so hard to enjoy with this gameplay. There is something I thought about though that was most definitely not intentional, but I still think it's pretty interesting. The gameplay can serve as a metaphor for a major theme in the game's story. What makes something a thing? Is being human the body, the physical form, or the consciousness? Or as I like to call it, the persona. Or in this metaphor's case, is SOMA the gameplay, its body, or the persona, its plot? That might sound like a dumb question, it's a game after all, the game is the game, a story is a story. But once you play through all of SOMA and realize the truth of what's going on, and what SOMA is trying to tell you, it really gets you thinking. Thinking real deep about what makes a thing a something. What makes a human. What makes being alive, alive. SOMA presents many themes and ideas in its story. It also presents many horrific ideas and images. It gets pretty fucked, I'm not gonna lie. It left me thinking, laying down on my bed and listening to 100 Gex Money Machine while questioning my very own existence. The fear factor and horror present in SOMA is directly interlinked and connected to its themes and ideas. The main theme presented in the game is the question, what makes us human, what makes us alive? These themes are executed in an incredible way that really scares and spooks you. It really makes you think about it. Throughout the game, you can find many different robots who believe themselves to be human. Most of the time, they die at first, and Simon doesn't really feel anything. They're just robots after all. They aren't special or complex, or nowhere near as lively and energetic as humans. They aren't alive. But soon later, Simon discovers that he himself is a robot. See, it turns out the original Simon is long gone, dead as hell. He died back in 2015 in Toronto because the doctors sadly weren't able to save him from his brain injury. The scan did nothing for him. But the scan was used for good research. In SOMA, you play as a duplicate of Simon, a direct copy of him from that moment the doctor scanned him. You're nothing more than an artificial intelligence controlling a bodysuit that happens to have a rotting corpse inside it. So this makes you, the player, and Simon question whether or not Simon is really Simon. Sure, he's not the original Simon, but he is Simon. He has all the same memories as the original Simon and even has his own new memories from his time at the bottom of the ocean. He still feels things like fear, anger, sadness, loneliness, and happiness, but he isn't human. Is his life worth anything? Is he even alive? Is this version of Simon even real in the first place? This question becomes even more frightening when later on in the game Simon must transfer his mind to another body. Once this happens, it's revealed that his mind doesn't necessarily transfer. He was cloned and put into another body, copy and pasted. And now this new Simon must make the choice of whether or not he should kill the previous Simon and put him out of his misery. See, if this Simon lives, he'll wake up in this hellscape alone, possibly on the brink of death too. Simon must kill Simon. But are either one of them the real Simon? There is one thing for certain though. Simon number 1, the one from Toronto, Simon number 2, the original robot, are technically the same at the end of the day, yeah, but they are drastically different in one department. That department being their mental health and view on life. Based on the last audio recording of Simon number 1, we can figure out that he has matured a little, ready to face death head on, knowing that there isn't anything that can save him. Sure, he's sad, but he's accepted it. He's obviously getting there, at least.
Okay, that's it. Wow, that was fun. That's a relief. Still figuring this out, so...
It was freaky. So many lights. What do we do now?
Paul and I are gonna run tests for a week or so, then we'll work out a roadmap to your recovery.
Well, I feel excited. Can't wait to get back to the living.
The model was sound. It should have worked.
It's not your fault, David.
I really wish things had turned out differently.
Yeah, me too.
I was supposed to save you.
Hey, you got my brain on file. Maybe you can put it to some use.
Yeah, who knows? You'd be okay with that? Using it for my research?
Sure. It's like a part of me lives on or something. Like a donated organ. You know what sucks about dying?
What?
The crash. Everything up till now. The brain damage. You guys, everything. It's made my life so much more real. I started thinking about all the things I was going to do. I'd never been more excited to be alive. All that hope. Wasted.
Simon number 2 is less mature and much more angry and is most definitely not over the death of his friend Ashley. But let's get back on topic. The thing is though, by the end of the game, just like you the player most likely, Simon doesn't have an answer to the question of whether or not he is the real Simon or whether or not he is alive. Throughout the game, your main objective has been to collect an item for this person named Catherine, a scientist who has collected many different scans of people's minds and put them into a simulation of sorts called the Ark, like Noah's Ark.
Hey! Yeah? What the hell is this?
It's humanity's last hope of anything close to survival. Near the end of the game, Simon is under the impression that both him and Catherine will have their minds transferred over to the Ark. However, this is not how it goes. Just like previously in the game, their minds don't actually transfer, their minds are copied onto the Ark.
Fuck this! Fuck this! Fuck you! Fuck you, Catherine, you lied! And I believed in you, I trusted you! You said we're getting on the fucking Ark!
We are on the Ark, you idiot! I didn't lie! I can't be responsible for your goddamn ignorance! You
Fuck! Catherine? Please don't leave me alone. Catherine? Catherine?
Simon is mad, but he really doesn't have time for that since the power goes out and Catherine disappears and goes offline. He is alone. Since she was connected to the power, this also raises the question of whether or not Catherine kills herself in this moment, or it's just as simple as the power runs out. I personally believe that Catherine kills herself, after all she has no purpose in life now. After this, Simon is left alone, in the dark, uncomfortable in his own body and doesn't know if he's actually Simon or not, in a dying world, and a place that is trying to kill him. It is all over and there's no hope. It's a sad and dark ending that leaves you feeling unsatisfied but for all the right reasons. You did what you could, you questioned yourself, and you got to the end. After the credits are done rolling, the game cuts to a much more brighter, much more happy scenario. A new Simon, the Simon on the Ark. Before Simon meets up with Catherine and the game ends, there's a tablet that has questions on it. The questions mainly can be boiled down to: do you feel human? Do you feel alive? And do you feel like you? I had difficulties answering these questions, but I answered them to the best of my ability. These themes and questions tie into a different type of fear though. There is a condition called the capgras delusion. It's basically the fear that someone you know, someone close to you, isn't them. They aren't who they say they are. They're an imposter. An example of the capgras delusion would be the relationship between Yoshikage Kira and Hayato from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4. Kira is pretending to be Hayato's father. Hayato knows better though. He thinks that someone is impersonating his dad. You may be wondering how this connects to SOMA, and I'll explain. In SOMA, a similar condition that has parallels to the capgras delusion is present. Simon fears he isn't Simon, that he's not real. All the robots in the game are imposters when you think about it. Sure, they all have personas that correlate with a human that used to exist, and they do think they are these people. But are they really these people at the end of the day? They're robots after all. Are they the same person? I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out my ass, but I think it's pretty interesting. The question of whether or not the robots are alive, or if their so-called lives are of the same value to natural-born humans, is made more complicated and sinister when the concept of the continuity theory and the Brandon Wan simulations are introduced. The continuity theory was made by a team member named Mark. His theory was that if you had killed yourself before or shortly after the scan, the human you would be transported onto the Ark. That way, the artificial intelligence version of yourself won't outlive the human one, so it wouldn't take your place. This leads to many members of the crew killing themselves after being scanned. You can visit some of these crew members' rooms, and dear God is it incredibly fucked. It's some really dark shit, man. The worst part of it all is this theory is made up of nothing more than pure ignorance, but it is reasonable human ignorance. What do I mean by this? Well, the crew knows this isn't how the Ark works or how the brain scans work either. But they want to believe that's how it works. It's the end of the world. The human race is on the brink of extinction. There is no real hope of survival other than shooting the Ark up into space, which might fail. There's nothing left. Death is really the only option here. So why not lie to yourself to make your death easier? Make it easier to pull the trigger. It's human ignorance. And let's be honest, they might have made a smart choice here. Later on in the game, you end up in a part of the building that is connected to many rooms. A lot of them seem to be medical bays. When going into these rooms, you can see many people being kept alive by the WoW. They are suffering. They are in pain. This sure as hell isn't what I and probably you would consider living. There is one moment in the game where you can just see one of the suffering crewmates crying in pain, holding a photo of his son who most likely died when the Earth was hit by the comet. Yeah, I don't know if I cleared this up in the video, but Earth is dead. Earth is gone. It was hit by a comet. My bad for not mentioning that if I didn't. If you head up the stairs in this area, you find the last living human on Earth, Sarah. She has the Ark too. She's on life support and wants to die. She asks Simon to kill her. I don't know if the choice is optional or not, I don't remember, but looking at her, I couldn't do anything but pull the plug. Sure, she was the last living human on Earth, but I just couldn't stand seeing her in this state. I stayed with her until she was fully dead. I know it's just a game, but I felt bad and sick every time I thought of leaving the room while she was on her deathbed. The state she was in, it isn't living. She's suffering just like the people being overtaken by the WoW. And hell, she might even be suffering more than them. At one point of the game, Simon gets attacked and is almost consumed by the WoW. Simon, of course, makes it out alive, but while being overtaken, he's transported to a dream world of sorts where he gets to talk to his dead friend.
Don't move. It's okay.
What?
It's over now. Relax.
Ashley? What are you doing here?
Hanging out, like couples do.
We're not...
You don't want me?
Yes, of course, but... What happened?
We fell in love.
This implies that most likely all the other living humans and robots in the WoW are experiencing something similar to this. Sarah, on the other hand, is alive, awake, and can't move. She is forced to watch the world end horrifyingly as she has to be fully awake and conscious of it all. I won't lie, compared to the people being kept alive by the WoW, I think Sarah is suffering way more than them. At least they are in some fucked up dream world. She's having to watch the world just end around her. Watching Sarah die, watching all the robots die, whether it be painful or peaceful, it's incredibly sad to see and downright horrifying at times. Seeing how they react really makes the question of what makes something alive even harder to answer. It gets even more complicated when you get introduced to the Brandon Wan simulations. So in the game, Simon and Catherine need a security code, but the only one who would have had it is dead. Dead as hell. So to get the code, they put a brain scan of a team member named Brandon Wan into the computer and run a simulation to try and get the code. What happens is the simulation fails over and over and over again, and Brandon dies over and over and over again. You essentially kill Brandon as if his life means nothing. What's even more fucked is that later on in the game, to make him more comfortable so the simulation works, you have to go into his room and look at all the stuff to try and figure out how to make him comfortable. This leads to Catherine, when running the simulations, impersonating his girlfriend to manipulate him. Then, after getting the code, they end the simulation and kill him yet again. Cut his life off again. It's incredibly fucked and uncomfortable to sit through. I felt sick to my stomach just sitting there, watching it all go down. It wasn't pleasant. Once the simulation is over, Simon is given the opportunity to either let Brandon's scan stay around or delete it. The worst part about this choice is that no matter what you do, it really isn't going to change much. Unless someone decides to run the simulation again, he's going to stay dead, and the chances of the simulation being run again is incredibly slim and unlikely, especially since you're kind of like the last sane person on this entire damn building. This means your choice either leaves Brandon in an eternal state of limbo or in a state of eternal death. It's so fucked, man. Really fucked. Also, this doesn't really fit in with what I'm talking about, and I can't really figure out how to incorporate it into the video, but holy shit, the way human Catherine is killed is so fucked, man. I know I say that a lot, but it's the truth. She's killed by her colleagues in cold blood. They claim it's an accident, but when looking at how much blood is on the wrench, we can tell it wasn't. Also, when listening to the audio call, we can tell that she dies immediately after this. When she gets hit, you can only hear one thump, then it cuts to the audio of the team members. That's a really cool detail. Honestly, Catherine is a really sad and tragic character, and you can just tell that she's had some issues in the past. Also, based on the scenery and how Sarah is still alive and the corpses around the map aren't decomposed, suggests that the last few humans on Earth died pretty quickly, which, let's be honest, is really accurate. The minute the world ends, the last few humans are going to tear each other to bits and pieces, you know it. We cannot keep our sanity that long. Like I had said previously in the video, the horror in the game is very clearly connected to the themes and ideas. But there is some horror in the game that I'd say isn't very connected to the themes, and I'd say that horror is the body horror present. Like, I guess you could make a fair point in saying that Simon feels out of his body, like it isn't real, that he isn't real. And I guess you could say the WoW's idea of preservation could be a metaphor on how in the name of self-preservation some people just make completely fucking awful and piss-poor decisions that could ruin them and fuck them up forever. But I don't know, I don't really feel like they connect enough to say that's the case. The body horror, in my opinion, is just kinda there to be there, to enhance the scare factor of the game and make you more uncomfortable than you already were. Call me a loser, but the Ark, on the other hand, scares the shit out of me. It is actually one of my worst fears. A German philosopher named Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche, what the fuck is that name?
Friedrich Nietzsche.
Huh. Interesting. Anyway, he once said that suffering is not just something that happens to us, it is bound up in who we are as creatures that grow and change. And Socrates had said at one point that the purpose in life is both personal and spiritual growth. I agree with both of these claims. Now you may be asking what this has to do with what I'm saying, so let me explain please. Based on the information given to us in the game, I believe that the people in the Ark do not feel pain, and because of how they're programmed, they cannot change. The change they go through would be artificial. The way people change is random, and the results are never straightforward and don't really make any sense. Well, sometimes it makes sense, but sometimes it doesn't. Some people will just stub their damn toe and turn into a literal murderer in less than a minute. So any changes that people in the Ark go through won't be human change, real change. They do not truly evolve. To me, that is a horrifying concept. One of humanity's greatest characteristics, in my opinion, is that we change and evolve, that we become better than the people we were the day before, and the people in the Ark don't get to experience that. Humanity's greatest characteristic is forever lost to time, and capable of being replicated. Not to mention that Simon is a legacy scan, one of the first scans ever made, and the AI in the Ark is built off of his base, meaning that everybody on the Ark technically has a bit of Simon inside them. The horror of this game is really something special. It is true psychological horror and is such an upgrade and improvement from the scary, but let's admit, simple and basic horror of the Dark Descent. I'm not gonna lie or sugarcoat it, I have no clue what to do now. SOMA is such an odd-ass game, dog. On one hand, it's incredibly slow, messy, and just not fun to play at all. It's a mess in the gameplay department, to say the least, and it is atrocious to actually play and sit through. It's utter hell, to be completely honest, at least for someone like me. The thing is, yeah, there is a setting that's basically a safe mode and makes the monsters non-hostile, but then the game is incredibly boring. But on the other hand, holy shit, the game is a profound work of art. The themes and how they interlock with the horror, the atmosphere, the characters, the ending, all of it just goes together so well, it ends up being the perfect chicken pot pie dinner of gaming stories, and stories in general. It's so amazing. And all the hidden details that you can figure out and the feeling you get when you put all the pieces together in your head and it all just clicks, it fucking rocks. It's a great feeling. It's so fucking good, I love it. But SOMA is a video game at the end of the day. It's supposed to be fun to play. The gameplay is supposed to be interesting and engaging, but it's not. Not at all. So I'm conflicted on whether or not I recommend the game. I'm split right down the middle. So to answer the question of whether or not I recommend SOMA, I'd say that it's really up to you. You just have to figure it out for yourself. That's legit all I can say. The game is whack. But if I were to give it a score, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It's a pretty mixed game due to its gameplay.